Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Jen Radwanski. I'm the Director for Parent and Family Partnerships here at Stockton University, and we're so excited to have you here this evening for our Fall Housing Renewal Overview for Families webinar. Before we get started, I just want to kick off with a couple of announcements and reminders. First of all, I do want to remind all of our family members that Preceptor days begin tomorrow. Preceptor days, for those of you who are not familiar, are the 2 days out of the school year when classes are not in session so that students can meet with their advisors. That's what we call a preceptor or an advisor. And so it's important that students are meeting with their preceptor and schedule a meeting either for tomorrow or for Wednesday, April 7th next week. So that's next Wednesday, April 7th and tomorrow. They should have a date scheduled for that virtual meeting most likely. And we just would encourage you to talk to your student, make sure they have that scheduled, because that's the meeting that they will be going over what they need to register for next semester. And so that's why we're also here tonight to talk about next semester and to talk a little bit more about the housing renewal process for our students who wish to live on campus. I am joined by some of my colleagues here who I'll introduce in just a second, but as they get started, what I want to share with you is this is a webinar format. And so we are not able to hear or see you, but you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. So please feel free, if you have questions at any time, to post those questions by clicking on the Q&A link. We'd be happy to answer those questions. It is much easier for us to do that. Don't click on the chat, click on the Q&A. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Brian Placino and James Timothy, who will be presenting this evening's webinar. So guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My name is Brian Placino, Associate Director for Residential Life.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Timothy, Assistant Director for Residential Life.
And what we're going to be doing this evening is we're going to be running through a PowerPoint presentation a little bit. It has some good general information. It revolves around heavily on applying for housing and what that looks like, and just kind of like what housing really is. We really want to make sure we get to a point where you all can ask some of your own questions. And we're going to treat this the same way we treat the webinars that we put on for your students, in that if the question comes in the chat, we will not answer it. So if you want your question answered, make sure you put it in the Q&A. That's so this way we can monitor which one we're answering and make sure we can keep track of them so that we can make sure we're not doubling up on answers and whatnot. So at this point, what we'll do is I'll start our presentation here, and then we'll get moving, okay? Now, if you have any questions during the situation, James, you want to give them the rundown of how they can handle that?
Yeah, so as we go through the slides, we're hoping that the information will kind of give you a perspective of how things are working. So if you have a question that's in the Q&A, I'll say definitely type it up, throw it in there. Now, we might add it, we might answer it while we're going. This might pertain to what we're talking about. We might hold off for a little bit because it actually might be on one of the upcoming slides. Or we might choose to kind of, to keep the flow going, that we're going to go through our presentation, but we will touch base on your questions. So definitely, if there's a good question, throw it in there. There's honestly no such thing as a bad question when it comes to housing, because there's a lot of information that, people are curious about. But definitely, if you think something, put in the Q&A. But if we don't get to it right away, we just kind of ask for that little bit of patience as we roll through.
All right, with that, let's get moving here. So I'm going to start off here with a very, very easy to read, very plainly spelled out there for you. Notice, courses will be back in person for fall 21. Okay, there's no way around being able to misread that. Let me tell you. Okay, we have been told by the administration here that we will be moving back to more of a in-person class modality. Approximately 80% of our courses will be in person, last I heard. And so with that kind of course load in person, we wanted to make sure we stressed that to you all, because we know some students are, well, we'll wait and see till we pick our courses. And here's the issue with that, is that it's that getting your cake and eating it too methodology. If you want to get housing that you want, or you want to have a chance at one of your top choices, now's the time. And so that's why I wanted to start right out the gate saying, listen, We understand that things could always change in this world. We've all learned that very much so over the last 12 calendar months, right? However, However, you have to kind of roll with the plan that is presented before you. And right now, that is the plan we have. So please make sure you're keeping in mind as we're going through this, and you go off and you text or you reach out to your student and say, "Hey, what's going on with your housing?" And it's not because we're trying to be pushy about it. It's really because the more time we're given with your student to help them, the more help we can do versus being it all being last minute or after deadlines. All right. So we're going to open up with that right there. Okay. And then
So
what we'll do is we'll show you some applying for housing tips and tricks for renewal students versus incoming high school students and transfers. Okay, so to be clear, renewal would be whether you are a student who is currently a freshman, sophomore, junior, or a senior or a grad student at Stockton now, versus if you were an incoming high school student or you took a gap year out of high school, or you went to community college right now, you would be considered an incoming high school student or a transfer student.
So in this section, we'll talk about, those of you that are brand new coming to Stockton University. So the great news is that the application for the fall 21 semester into spring 22, it's available right now. To get to the application, you have to be accepted to the university, have a Z number and a login for the Go portal. And what will happen is that students will log in, click on the Go portal, and they'll have several tabs there. The Student Life tab, which is a great hub for pretty much anything and everything that they need while, going to Stockton. We have a residential life section there. And the first link there is the link to bring them to their housing portal. And it says academic year 21-22 application. When they're in the application, they'll just have to review the contract, scroll through it, make sure they go over all the points. And at the bottom, they're going to choose if they want just the 9-month or the 12-month. Now, what that means is that we can add break housing. So if they want to stay full year round, they can add winter and summer right there in the application. Or they can just stay with the standard fall and spring contract. But they'll choose which one they want, put their initials in, and continue on. Now, for brand new students, first time living in housing, there is a housing deposit, which is the $150 deposit. Now, keep in mind, a deposit, it's going towards their housing bill. So it's just kind of putting in that deposit, saying, hey, yes, I want housing. So when you finally get your assignment, that $150 is already factored in there. Now, the important thing is going through the application, we do look for other details from the student, and we want to make sure they're accurate. So what we say that there is their emergency contact information. The big thing is the students fill out their contact information, and then there's the emergency contact information. So we all know that your student is the one doing the application. That's important. So when they're filling out that application and they're putting their contact information, it should be their phone number, their email address. Because a lot of times, residential life, we work in all kinds of hours because we work on your student schedule. We might have a 9 to 5, but being here at, close to 8 o'clock at night, this is not outside the realm of Brian and I typical work times. And especially if your student says, well, I'm in class all day. Can you call me at 8:30 at night? Gladly. So we'll go look at their contact information, pull up their phone number, and call them. Now, the heart attack is that if we're calling and another person's phone number is there, well, you're getting called at 8:30 and suddenly you're scared about why we're calling, why we're trying to get in touch with your student. It's late, it's after hours, and that's more so that we want to make sure that we're able to get through to your student. So when they fill out the application, their information should be their information. When it comes to the emergency contact information, definitely you can make sure that they have the right number, the number that you want to be called at in case it's ever used. But we want to make sure there's a big distinction there. The personal profile in the application, that's also one of those things. The student has to fill it out. And the advice you can give them is to fill it out honestly. Because the personal profile, it's not a lot of questions, but it's really core down to the key questions that we find students look for as they pair up with other students. So please keep that in mind that if you're looking at it and, your student says, hey, they indicate on there, oh yeah, I'm an early morning person. But if your student has a day off that they're never waking up past like 1 p.m., well, maybe they have to be a little more honest about that. So it's good to keep that in mind because those personal profiles do help when it comes to recommended roommates, trying to pair them up. So we do want to make sure your students are taking that seriously. Going from there, students can rank their housing preferences. So we'll get into a little bit of that in a moment. But for new students, we do look at what your preferred housing order is when we do assignments. Then also we'll take roommate preferences. So, if your student comes in knowing somebody they want to live with, they'll be able to search for them as long as they have a completed application also. At the same time, if they don't know anyone and they want to search for who they pair with, they can use the housing portal for that, or they don't have to select anyone. And it's just, sometimes going for a unknown roommate is the best way. It gives them a chance to meet new people, a chance to expand their social groups. Because every year, I can tell you, doing assignments, I get some new students coming in and they're like, yeah, I know tons of people going to Stockton. Don't want to live with any of them. And that's great because they have their friends that they know already, which is one social group, but they're looking to expand and make more. There's the meal plan selection, and that does open in August. So students sometimes worry about like, oh, I didn't complete my application, I didn't choose a meal plan, but that does open later. Now, we will note that there are due dates for our, high school graduates who are coming to Stockton for the first time. That due date is June 1st. And for our transfer students coming from another institution, that's August 1st. Now, these due dates, it doesn't mean that's a hard set deadline of if you apply afterwards, you don't get housing. What it does mean, though, is before those deadline dates, our office is able to work more on the housing preferences, the roommate preferences, and try to get the best placements as possible. After the deadline, we'll still work to provide you housing, but you may be put on a wait list and receive your assignment on a rolling basis. So I think kind of ran through all the details there.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
There we go.
Working the beat and putting the kid to bed. You know what I mean? You all know y'all parents, right? Or guardians of some sort. All right. So, next slide. Current/returning Stockton students. Again, this is defined as those students who are currently attending Stockton, have attended Stockton and have taken courses, or they were here for a semester, and then even if you took a semester off because of COVID, you're still a current/returning student as long as you did not fully withdraw. Okay? That means if you're a student right now taking courses, we got a few questions during the last slide. This is the slide you're going to want to be paying attention to. Okay? All right, so let's talk about this for a little bit. First and foremost, that application looks familiar from the last slide. Why? Because it's still the housing contract. You got to sign that. Sorry, you got to abide by our rules, right? Go portal, student life tab, residential life section, okay? The academic year 21-22 contract is in there. Same opportunities if you want 9-month versus 12-month. And if that changes, like James had mentioned, you get an internship, you get a good job, whatever the case may be, the student can expand on that at any given point during the semesters. But number one thing right now is you want to get that housing contract in. And I know you read ahead to that little red section on the slide right now, and I know you're panicking. We're going to talk about it, okay? So deposits, $50 if you're a renewal student. If you are someone who is in a position and you are unsure which deposit, which app, things like that, the student should be emailing us housing@stockton.edu. That is HOUSING @stockton.edu. I know you can spell the rest of it. If you can't, it's in the background right there, okay? It's also on the slide. Again, emergency contact information. Here's another good thing to make sure that the student has emergency contact information for. In a perfect world, we'd never have to use it, but just in case we do have to use it, we need to make sure that's accurate as well, right? So let's make sure we get some accurate information in there. Full phone numbers. This isn't back in the day anymore. We need area codes, people. Make sure we get them, okay? Otherwise, we can't, dial in 609-201-856 trying to get lucky. So make sure we have a full phone number in there for you, okay? Roommate group. Okay, this is where it starts to get different for our renewal current students, okay? This is the big one. Roommate groups. Now, let's say I'm going to Stockton University and I want to live with James Timothy, Steve Radwanski, and Sean Bush. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a roommate group after I've signed my contract and paid my deposit, okay? So I make the roommate group. That automatically makes me the group leader. And I name my group the Res Life Guys. And I tell James, I tell Steve, I tell Sean, I tell them all, hey, you got to join up with me so we can make our roommate group, okay? And they're joining with me. Perfect, because a full group does get priority. However, and here's a big however, I know someone had asked, well, what if my student only has, 2 people in their group? As long as they get it by the deadline, they'll still get housing. They'll still have an opportunity to choose from what's available at their time. Okay. And so that no matter if your group is a one-person group, I saw that we had a question here from someone asking how many people per room. And listen, we're definitely going to get to that question for you. Just hold out a little bit and we got you. Don't worry. Okay. Great question, though. Very important question. How many people per room? We'll get there. So group leader is in charge of picking on selection day. And the way this process works is, imagine back in the day when we were allowed to go to concerts and we were able to pick what seats we wanted. We had our price range and we're deciding what section, what row, what seats. Kind of the same thing for housing, and it's the fairest way to do it. And so the way we set this up is that we make sure that you are in a position where you can choose housing 5, 4, 1, depending on where you're living. If you're a renewal student, Atlantic City, but you do have to choose for what is available at the time. Okay, and let's say you get on there and your time slot comes up, which we would email you after the deadline when your time slot will be. You need to have backup plans. So let's say our number one goal is we want to live in a 4-person private in Atlantic City. Okay. Well, guess what? If that's not there, I have to make sure that I have a backup plan for that. Okay. Now, due date, Thursday, April 1st. Thursday, April 1st. Here's the deal. To sign the contract and pay the housing deposit, that needs to be in there. You got to get that done ASAP. Okay. We got to get that signature in there. We got to get that contract in there because here's the thing. The deadline's coming and we've emailed and we'll cover it. We've been reaching out. We have a lot of students who, they're focused on their academics, I'm sure. But we got to make sure we get this done because this is the deadline for this. Okay. I see someone asked, what if a student wants to apply? I'm sorry, my son does not have a group yet. If he signs up and pays the deposit today, can he join a group after April 1st? So here's the deal. We have to very strongly encourage that you get those groups moving now. Now, if your student pays the deposit and signs the contract today, they still have a couple days to make that group, even if they get 1-2 people together. If it happens to be that, because I'm looking at the calendar and James, you tell me, April 1st is Thursday.
It's Thursday.
To do it by Monday, we could probably give them till Monday if we get an email from them, right? Does that sound good to you?
I was about to say, but as long as they complete the other requirements, they have to have a signed contract and the deposit has to be in process. The big thing is that we do get a lot of students saying, hey, I found this friend, but the friend hasn't applied for housing. Might not even be accepted into the university. So we get that request sometimes. So it really has to be, they have to be another continuing student. And that continuing student means that, your student transferred to Stockton this semester. If they're here now, they're considered a continuing student. Even if they're at home remote, anything like that, they're a continuing student and they go through this process. So that's a big thing to keep in mind. So, we really do set the deadlines because we want to make sure students, they need to know that deadline's there. But obviously, we do work with students who have 1 or 2 hiccups along the way. A friend had trouble getting the application. We'll always work with students. But the truth is that this deadline's there because it's much more difficult to work with making arrangements for groups after that deadline.
So someone had asked that. Let me just pull it up here. If you are currently a student, even if you transferred in your first semester, you've never taken a course in person, it's all been online virtual, you're still a current student. So you're still going to pay that $50 only. You're still going to sign the contract. You're still going to go through that process of making a group and all that. And you're still going to select your housing. Gives you the most options in that way. Okay. But make sure that you're getting in there and you're putting yourself in a position for success. Okay. So make sure you get that taken care of. Okay. But yeah, if you make sure you're getting those signatures and deposits in by April 1st, we are running out of time, folks. We'll give you the whole day of April 1st. We won't check those numbers until Friday, 9 a.m. So like if it needs to be before, Friday 8 a.m., we're not gonna hold you to it. But make sure you get those in ASAP because deadlines are deadlines. And while we do try to work with everybody, we got to know what we're looking at for the fall semester so we can start making those time slots. Okay. Anything you want to add to this slide, James?
Well, no, so I will note we have a couple questions about students finding roommates and everything like that. I will actually say we're going to work on that answer in a couple slides when we actually talk about the housing options, and we'll incorporate that then. So just because I see a couple questions coming about that, so I just want to give everyone a heads up.
And I also want to say this. I also want to throw this out here, and I'm going to be very earnest and honest with y'all. Okay. Here's the deal. Your student is not alone right now. Okay. We know that there's a lot of students who really haven't been. Listen, raise your hand to yourself in your own space if this has been a normal year for you. No one's hand should be up, right? So it's the same for these students. And so we are going to have some students who are, single passenger riders. And just like if you were going on a roller coaster, they get in, they get a spot just like everyone else. And maybe they make roommates, they make friends with their new roommates they're going to get in the fall. So while maybe your student might not end up filling a full group, you are going to be in a position where your student, or if you're the student out there, so we got a couple of questions from students themselves who, hey, you're ambitious. I love it. Go get it. Get your info. It's okay. It's okay. Don't feel like, oh, they're gonna get housing. They're gonna get a couple of roommates, and they're gonna make some friends. Which earnestly and honestly, I think we're all ready for that, right? So don't be too worried if it doesn't fill out a full 4-person group. It's just that when we have the students who actually make a full 4-person group, the reason they get to choose first is because if we have all the first, the single passenger riders go first, then those 4-person groups would have to break up. That being said, there will be space available for our single passenger rider students who are looking to make some friends in the fall and spring next year. Okay. But we will cover that other thing. You ready to move to the next one, James?
All set.
This is a highlight one, James. Go ahead and highlight it.
I was about to say, it is available now because even at this point, we've been putting out information. We've been emailing students, both new students applying to the university as well as students who are currently attending classes. They have been contacted. The application for next year is available now. And this message, big bold, it's been out there for a little bit and they've been getting the emails about it. So we just want to really emphasize that if your student is not sure about when the housing application is available, it is available now.
All right. I know we had a couple people that we kept clicking answer live and dismiss to, or saying, hey, we're going to get to you. We're going to explain what we got. And now is the time we're going to do that. So I guess I'll do this one. You'll do the next one, James, or how you want to do this?
Let's no, we can quickly run through this. I'll say this one's quick. The next slide we'll talk about our continuing students. We'll probably have a little more. So right now, just for our brand new students, we'll say that our high school graduates coming to college for the first time, you have a couple options when you run through your housing preferences. Say that, our traditional style, dorm style ideas, like what we think of that college tradition, that's going to be in housing 2 and housing 3. These are the only areas that are first year freshman areas only. They are set up by floors. There's, several different types of rooms on each floor. I'll get to that in a second. Common lounge, shared bathroom. They are set up as single gender per floor because of the shared bathrooms. Housing 2 offers singles, doubles, and triples on each floor. I will note there's 1 triple per floor, and that triple is the only area that we have bunk beds. So it's something to keep in mind, 3 students, but it is bunked. It is a slightly larger room, so that accounts for the 3 students, but bunk beds are required there. For housing 3, we have singles and doubles. Now, housing 1 and Atlantic City, when we talk about that for our first year students, there's this apartment style. There's some students come in thinking, hey, I want that traditional dorm style. Others, they are ready for that adult life because they want that kitchen, they want that independence, they are ready to handle that. Because we introduced this several years ago and it's been popular with our first year students ever since. So housing 1 is our courtyard setup apartment style where the apartments open up right to a courtyard. And then Atlantic City, that's our shining gem because it's still new to us, which my background is a nice little view of that. Both these areas, they offer both for shared, and Atlantic City also offers for private for students. So essentially what it means, the shared style, it's 2-bedroom, 2 students per bedroom. They still share a bathroom, kitchen, common area. I will note though that Atlantic City, their shared has 2 bathrooms. Same thing with the for private. So for private is 4 individual bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, common area, kitchen. Our transfer students coming in, they'll have the option of Housing 1 or Atlantic City. So Housing 1 is the 4-person shared, and again, Atlantic City, 4 private and 4 shared. Yep, and I'll note with that, so because we mentioned Housing 1, we'll touch base on it more on the next slide, but Housing 1, you might see communication online, some postings still where it says 5-person apartment. Because for the last several years, we've had 5 people in Housing 1. However, moving into next year, it will be 4-person apartments. So when we talk about maximum size of apartments, 4-person is the maximum per group. So we'll get more on that in a second, but the 4-person is what you'd be looking for. Not a bad summary, right, Brian?
I give you a B plus.
All right, that's
You have to pull the grade up. Next slide, though. All right. So current returning Stockton students. James had covered the. Do you want to just keep running with it since you were starting to talk about some of these already?
Exactly. So, so you'll notice here there's a couple different options that we have for our current students. So Housing 1, all the details I gave there, still the same. Atlantic City, still the same. But then we have our Housing 4 and Housing 5. Housing 4 and 5 are on the Galloway campus. Housing 4 is still set up where it is, shared apartment, so 2 students per bedroom. Those beds are lofted with the desk and dresser underneath. They share common area, kitchen, bathroom. Housing 5 is 4 private bedrooms. They share a kitchenette, a common area, and usually like a shower room and a toilet room. So that's something to keep in mind of the different styles. I will note that Housing 1, 4, and Atlantic City, all of those apartments have kitchens. So the meal plan is optional. Students can still get it, and we have a lot of students that live in a housing apartment with kitchens who still have a meal plan. But if your student's a 5-star chef or just really comfortable with mac and cheese or ramen noodles, it's a good option for them too. But Housing 5, I will note, because it doesn't have a full kitchen, does require a meal plan. So we want to make sure that our students, our family and students know that going into it, because sometimes it's a surprise to them. But I will note, going back into all these options that we have listed, these apartments are all 4-person. So that's why our maximum group size is 4 people. Now, talking about some housing preferences, about, going into the idea of student groups, sizes, everything like that. I will note that we have a few questions that came up. Brian, I'm sorry, I'm going to let you kind of sort through and find them. But students, family members that asked, hey, my student's planning to go through this process alone. That's totally fine. If they're going as an independent, kind of their own group leader, what they'll be able to do is as they look at apartments, they'll be able to say, hey, I found during my selection time, I found this apartment. It has 1 bed available. Fantastic. Oh, it has 2 beds available. Well, I'll take 1 of them. So they will have that option to look through what is available at their time slot and be able to fill in that space themselves. For anyone asking, hey, my student might want a single, we will kind of point you towards looking at Housing 5 or the Atlantic City 4-person private. These 2 housing areas, it still provides them with that single bedroom, but all of our continuing upperclassmen areas are kind of apartments. So there will be that aspect of sharing still the common space bathroom, things like that. But that private bedroom is at least there so that, students do want that time to have their own space. So those 2 housing areas are most popular for students looking for that. So if your student, so one of the questions that I also saw in there was, well, what if my student has a group of 2, a group of 3? Hey, they're not sure about their group yet. They're looking for more members. We've actually been emailing all of our continuing students, lots of information about our renewal sessions, which we have our last 2 this week. But we also include in there our Residence Hall Association, the RHA. They have put together a Facebook group to help students post, join sections of it saying, hey, I'm by myself. I'm looking for other males to live with. My goal really is an AC4 private. That's my top choice. Anyone looking for roommates? Or it might be that, Brian, myself, and Steve, we're a group of 3. And hey, we really want to live in Housing 4. We're looking for one other person to live in Housing 4. So the students are able to post in there and start picking and choosing roommates, reaching out to them. And it is a great opportunity. I will say, if your student says, well, I tried, it's just, this is the last week, and I can say from last week, there was movement, there was conversation. This week already, just Monday, there's been a lot more conversation. So I'd say I can definitely recommend your student check that out. For other students, they've had different luck. I mean, because every year we get students saying, hey, I'm not sure about other roommates. We always recommend students try their other resources. A lot of students do find their classier Facebook groups quite helpful. If your student's not so much on Facebook, I can also say that we've had a lot of students have luck by talking to people in their courses, getting to know people in their majors, their clubs and organizations that they're part of. These are really good resources that it does take your student a little bit to reach out saying, hey, who's living in housing next year? Who's planning to? What are you looking for? But we've had students that have had great success that way. Especially if they're looking at students in their major, it's a good opportunity because they're going to take a lot of the same classes, go over a lot of the same information. Or clubs and organizations, they have a lot of those shared interests. So we will recommend students to, look through those connections. But at the same time, if they choose to say, hey, we're a group of 2, Brian and I are going to go into this. Well, when we choose housing, we'll find 2 beds, we'll put ourselves together, and then we get to meet 2 new people who sign up in the other 2 beds.
And those of you who are asking, how does your student get to the Facebook group? We're going to explain that in a moment, okay? Just so you know, so you have the information, if you are interested in seeing really what the housing looks like, we have our virtual tours online. If you go to the Stockton website and type housing options in the upper right-hand corner, it'll bring you to how to look at the virtual tours. Now, the 2 things to keep in note is the 4-person apartments are currently established as 5 persons in those tours. We are changing that. And there's a reduced rate doubles in the tours that we're not going to have for the fall semester. So we will be changing those soon as we can get people to come out. COVID has delayed that a little bit. So common questions, okay? COVID. All right, we've had a couple of different questions about what's going on, what's the deal, what do we know? So here's ultimately what we have going on. I can tell you a couple things. One, I can tell you what we're doing right now, and some of you know this already, where we have absolutely masks are required. We are doing social distancing. We are taking student safety very seriously. Our administration takes it seriously because the number one thing that we have to be in charge of is making sure our students are safe and making sure they're earning an education. And so that is our top priority here. However, we do know that as the governor's office and the CDC starts to change some of the restrictions, we will also work with those to make sure we're offering the best experience for our students against making sure that we also keep their safety in mind. Now, for the fall semester, what does that mean for our residential students? Right now, we have what we have. However, the reason we don't have any committal to any one particular plan for the fall is because we are preparing for anything. So if Governor Murphy and the CDC change the situation tomorrow, well, then by the end of tomorrow, we'll have our plans in place. And I wanted to give you a feel for what those 2 different things look like. We have our traditional legacy model, where it's our in-person full-fledged programming. And when we have those kind of programs that are indoors for the freshmen or the first year students rather, or we also have for the transfers as well. And then for the upper class students, we tend to do more stuff outside or in larger spaces like the Lakeside Lodge or in larger meeting spaces in Atlantic City. Now, some of those things we've been able to continue to do because we've been able to find spaces that are large enough for that social distancing to permit such programs. Some of the things have had to change. We've moved to virtual programming in some instances, but we do understand that coming up this fall, we need to keep an eye, forward in seeing that we have to change that model as we are provided with those updates as well. With with vaccines, gaining steam every day, it improves our outlook and our chances for really seeing a more cohesive programming model for our on-campus students in the fall. That said, until we know otherwise, masks will be required. Sanitation stations will continue to be filled. And even though we are moving to in-person courses, they will continue to abide by all CDC and governor guidelines to make sure your students are safe as well. We also put a lot of hard work into making sure we help our students who do have situations they have to handle, and we're with them every step of the way with that. Okay. So it's a little bit, I know it might seem a little bit of a, not giving you the full scope. And earnestly, that's by design from the sheer standpoint that we don't want to put ourselves and say this is what's going to be and then us be able to open up a little bit more later, and then we've already committed, and then some students feel, oh well, you said this and now it's going to be freer. We want to make sure we're able to move, ebb and flow with you as well. Now the other question I saw was what are we going to be looking for as far as vaccines are concerned. And I can tell you we have worked very closely in monitoring um, what we're able to do with that. And at this time, the universities continue to encourage everyone to our source safely, as we're calling it, which is mask up, back up, wash up, and vax up when you have the opportunity to. And we're working in accordance with the CDC. Currently, vaccination is voluntary. If something like that were to change, we absolutely would let you know and give you all the breakdown on that. Um, if you go to our website, if you go to stockton.edu and you type in fall 2021 campus operations, that will provide you the quickest and easiest way to know what the updates are. That said, as soon as we get updates, we'll be sending emails, we'll be sending text messages, we'll be sending carrier pigeons. We'll get the message out to you. I was kidding about the carrier pigeons, though. We don't have any. But so just know that we are keeping an eye out to making sure that we're providing you the most up-to-date information on that. Okay. Um, Question we got for some people. James, you want to cover that one for me?
Yeah. So a lot of times we get this question about, especially I'll talk for a moment to our first year students or transfer students. We talked about some other housing areas that they won't see in their application here. For some of our family members that have students that are currently here, for example, if they're in their freshman year, first year at Stockton, they might be living in housing 2 and 3. What do they do next year? Some areas are designated for certain sets of students. So I have to note that if your students in there in housing 2 or 3 now in their first year, it's wonderful, but they won't be able to live there next year. So we do get parents, we get students that ask if they just keep their stuff in their room until next year. Unfortunately not. Housing 2 and 3 is set for our new students for next year. For our transfer students on their application, you may not see housing 4 or 5 on your application. That's because those areas are some of the smaller, like numbered spaces. So what I can note is that it's just there's not as many beds in comparison. So for students going through renewal, they will definitely have a chance at picking those places. But a transfer student, whose your assignment comes later, those beds may not be as available. And we don't want to seem like we're just jumping to your second, third choice automatically in case, let's say, housing 4 is your top choice. For our renewal students, they have the options of just about everywhere, like I said, except for that, with that exception of housing 2, 3.
Yeah, and that works both ways. Returners, current students cannot go back to the dorms. Those are reserved for our first incoming high school students as well. Okay, and we say non-negotiable because unfortunately it's not, and we like to be very upfront with you and transparent because that experience is reserved for those 17, 18-year-old students that are coming in. And so and vice versa, where we're not in a situation where we want to put a 17, 18-year-old with a 22-year-old because they're different. They have different priorities, different things that they have, different lessons they're going to be learning. And so it works both ways. And so unfortunately in most cases we have to stand very pat on that. So, all right. And another question we get is has my student received info about all this? They have. And that's where we go into talking about this Facebook group. And that's where we go into talking about the emails and the housing renewal session where we go, and it's an hour long that we will go and they get this kind of and we sit there and we stay. And one night, I think one of the things we did, James, last week, we got in there at like 8 o'clock and we were in out to like 9:45 because students had great questions that were coming through. We stay there, we get the questions answered, unless it's like individual ones that we'll answer, during the business hours. And so if your student is in a position where they're trying to look for the Facebook groups, We have sent those emails out as well. So make sure they're checking their email. I think the latest one went out was today, actually, right? And that one, I believe it did as well. So, there you go. I made this morning. James sent one out this afternoon. So you can pop 329 on there as well. But yeah, so make sure they go right there. They can click right on it on their phone, sign up with their Facebook. Now, keep in mind, this is for students to join, not for parents. It's for students because the students will be sitting there, saying, hey, I'm an early riser, things like that. So that we are monitoring who we let into the Facebook group. Okay. But yeah, so if they want to get in that group and start asking people around, we've had some students who've had a lot of success. We've had some students, and I'll be frank with you as well. We've had some students who've gone there and said, you know what, I'm not really vibing with anybody, so I'm going to go as a single passenger rider, and I'm gonna figure it out when I get there, and that's okay too. When I went to Stockton, my freshman year, I came in here not knowing anybody, and by my senior year, I was very rich in having friends that I can try to room with. Ultimately, we broke into a few groups, got a couple apartments that were close by on campus, and we made it work. So that is how we've been getting those information out to your students. So make sure they are checking that information. Again, that's how you can find the easiest way to find that Facebook link is for them to click right in it, because the link itself is, it's an HTTP / www / all that stuff. So make sure you get that right over in there. And that is key. That is key for your students. And so, and just so you know, on this slide, the reason we also like to show this to you is because sometimes we'll have students who will tell their parental guardians, hey, I haven't gotten anything. And then parents, they're upset. And I get that because you want your student to get the information, right? And so we like to make sure we show this to you so that you're informed. That's why Jen Radwanski exists at Stockton. That's why this group is amazing, because this gives you that information you might not be getting. And so I wanted to throw that out there so you knew the information was getting out there, because don't worry, we got your students back, okay? So at this point, we'll open up to the Q&A section. But if your student's in a position where, and I know Jen had already posted in the link right there, if your student's in a position where they want to email us as well, housing@stockton.edu, get that out to us and we will definitely work with you. So we're going to have some questions coming through the Q&A. Here's the deal. If we don't get to answer them all this evening, and we're going to, we're going to hang around for a little bit and answer some of these questions for you. James and I probably take turns typing email or typing up answers and answering it live here for you. If we don't get to them, you can email housing@stockton.edu, and we'll get that answer to you too for like specific questions. But I generally will say this, and I'll tell you this, and I'll be earnest and honest. As a parent, you have an office dedicated to you. Use them, okay? Jen is there for you. She's got the 401, your students don't know what that means, but I know you do, 401, right? You know what I'm saying? But you have Jen Radwanski. Utilize her, okay? Yeah, you can email Jen too. She just put it out there, family@stockton.edu, okay? So let's get into this.
I'll actually take two really quick, just, it's about the application deposits.
Boom, go for it.
I will say the most important thing for your student to proceed, continuing students, I'll say, you want them to sign that contract. So once they sign the contract, they're able to progress through. As far as the deposit goes, it does say on the deposit page that it can take 2 to 3 business days to process. Now, during this, unfortunately, for it to show on their account, it is a manual process. Bursars lets us know that we got it, then we have to update the system to show that we did receive it. But I've been working to check it twice a day, firing it out to make sure the student records are updated. I will note that students keep looking at the deposit page for the detail there. It doesn't show there. They have to click on the application status link. So the application status gives them the status of their whole application. So if they see a green check mark there for deposit paid, they're all set. So a lot of times students will say hasn't showed, and it's been there for over a month or two. So I would say that's really big for the deposit to make sure that they're checking on that page. However, because the deposit does have this processing time, you can submit it and your student can go right through the application all the way to the roommate part, because that's what's open right now. So having that deposit will not hinder them from moving forward. So just keep that in mind. If they say they can't find their friends because the deposit's not there, Not true, because we do know that that's a time process. So definitely, if you're a student in here, and you're listening in, make sure that your contract is signed and you'll be able to process through there. If you're looking, your deposit still says it's not there, send us an email to housing@stockton.edu from your Stockton account, include your Z number, give us about when you believe you paid it, and we'll be able to look into that for you. Sorry, I will tag in one question I did like. So with Housing 145 Atlantic City, where there's apartments, one of the question was, well, how does cleaning the common areas, the bathrooms work? So part of that adult life with, living in the apartments does come with the fact that your student and their roommates are responsible for cleaning their own bathroom, their own toilet, their own dishes. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the big recommendations we love to say, students, when they have these roommates, it is great to reach out over the summer about, how they want to decide on cleaning supplies, things like that. We will always recommend the basics of, things like a little Swiffer mop vac type thing, the easy stick vacuums, things like that, because those are great. I will say, I do know that Jen has resources for the top recommended things for students to bring. And for those of you that thought about that your first year, it's great. It's important then. It's just as important for any student their continuing years, because that checklist really helps them see some things.
Someone asked, are students allowed to bring a car, and is there a fee? No, you can bring a car. There's no parking fee. There's no car fee. We have parking on campus if you're in Housing 1, Housing 4, Housing 5, Atlantic City. Actually, the nicest parking is probably in Atlantic City because you have a secure garage. Mine just gets parked on a rock driveway outside my house. But yeah, we do have parking everywhere, and students are allowed to have cars on campus fee-free. Okay. Someone asked, what's the cutoff date? We, do that application now for April 1st. Sign the contract, pay the deposit, just get it in now. And then, if you're looking for off-campus housing or something like that, I will say this. The one thing I will tell you is that the benefit of on-campus versus off-campus housing comes twofold. One, if your student and the roommates have issues off campus, whether it's with each other or with where they're living, it's not residential life that can help them out at that point. Listen, if you're in this session, it's because you're thinking about on-campus housing. Have your student come talk to us, and we'll walk through what they're really looking for, and if we're able to assist them in providing what they're actually looking to do, we absolutely can have that conversation with them and try to make the best decision with them.
So I'll cover one, because one of the questions in here is kind of like how, the general idea of like how likely are they to get their first choice, and I'll kind of generalize it saying, well, what happens about preferences, what's the likelihood of certain housing areas closing up. So the likelihood question is always a tricky one for us to answer, not because we don't want to give you the details, it's because honestly, I've been doing this job, well, I've worked in residential life at Stockton for many years, but I've been in my assistant director role, kind of working on assignments and everything like that for the last 6, 7 years. Oh gosh, it keeps going up. But every year that I've done this, the housing area that closed out first has changed. I've never seen a same housing area close out in like consecutive years. There's this perception that Housing 5 is the first to go because, the idea of like the private rooms, things like that. But equally, there's a lot of students that want that kitchen or, the cost prohibitive of living in Housing 5. So we do see that certain housing areas, a lot of it might fill. But, the last 2 years, we've seen that actually groups on the latest time slots, we're still able to find spaces in, let's say, like a 4-person private of some style, whether that was Atlantic City or Housing 5. We still had full apartments open in Housing 4 towards the end of our selection days. So it's something to keep in mind that there are options out there. The unfortunate thing is, it's not that to say how likely, it's tough for us. Because one, our office does not use the word guarantee. It's a dirty word for us because we do have to be, able to shift and move for anything that comes up and changes. But I will say the best things that can help your student out going through the housing renewal process is to make sure they're abiding, keep an eye on the deadlines. So saying, hey, okay, April 1st, my contract is signed, my deposit's in, great. Okay, I know I have friends I want to live with. Have they done it? So I will say, there's some of your students, they're good. They're emailing us saying, I'm trying to find my friend, I can't find them. They say they filled out their application. We can't tell them what another student is doing, but we'll reach out to that other student saying, hey, you got somebody that's looking out for you, and you still haven't signed your contract. You want to do that so you can join their roommate group. So it's really important for students to have these conversations. All of you are now experts in knowing that it is signing the contract and getting that deposit for your renewal student in. So you can make sure that your students know that's what they should be hounding their friends about too. So having that full roommate group, it just gives them a more likely time slot, like a higher priority time slot. And then so how we kind of break it out, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I will say it still is full roommate groups will have the highest priority.
I'm going to field a question I just was reading here. I got two of them. One, what are the beds like in housing one? Are they lofted like housing four? They are not lofted. If it has been my mission and my goal to get rid of bunk beds everywhere that I possibly can. And so far I've done that in all of housing three, all of housing one, and that's the ones I got rid of. Housing four is still lofted because the rooms are a little bit smaller, and so the desks and dressers go underneath. But in housing one, they are all on the ground. You have that underbed storage available to you, and they are extra long twin beds. Every bed on Stockton's campus is extra long twin. Okay, so if you're looking to invest in some sheets or a memory foam topper, extra long twin, and you'll be set. The other question I saw here was, will instructions on how to pick their rooms be sent with the emails giving them the time slot, or these be sent separately? Yeah, we're gonna give them that guiding information. Absolutely. On top of that, during the time slots, we're also gonna have a live Zoom session that students can pop in, and we'll have breakout rooms they can be popped into, ask their question, and pop out. Most of these questions end up being 30 seconds to 2 minutes. But there's students who want a little bit of guidance. We're there for them. We'll work with them. We'll talk with them. So, but yeah, we will definitely make sure that information comes out via email. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I see a couple questions in here. Just for some of you that might have students in their last year, some of you might have students looking into study abroad, things like that, as things start to open up. So the question was, well, what happens if they only need a fall contract? So they still fill out the academic year contract. So they'll fill out the 21-22 contract. And if they are graduating, they'll apply for graduation and confirm. They'll be able to cancel their housing contract because they're done, they graduated. If they're studying abroad, if they're doing an internship, DC, Disney, hoping things, start to open up, as long as they're accepted into one of those academic type programs, same thing. They'll apply for the year contract, and then they'll be able to cancel their housing. It just means at the end of the fall semester, they got to make sure, well, one, don't cancel until you're going away to a program. But two, it's also an opportunity for them to know, okay, I got accepted in this program. I know I'm going. I'm going to cancel my housing application. And at the end of the fall, they just have to move out of their apartment.
Seems like you have a couple people asking about how the full groups get assigned their time slot.
So how it kind of works is that there's some degrees of different priority. So as we go through time slots, we do look at, well, once again, full groups, main point. But what we do factor in is that, so our students that are signing up for year contracts, when they're part of a group, that does give that group a bit of a bump because those students are going to be here year round. And we do find a lot of students, when we have one student staying for the year, their roommates tend to do that also. So those students get a bit of a bump. Students that are seniority, the more completed credits, not currently enrolled in, but completed credits do factor into there. I will say once again, that's not disheartening to anyone that has a current freshman who's rising to be a sophomore. They have that complete group. They're still going to be better off than some students who might be super seniors trying to look alone. But I will say, if your student is going into their junior year, senior year, maybe looking to a graduate program, and they still are participating, they're kind of those golden ones that other groups are looking for. We do have groups out there that say, hey, we got 3 people, we want 1 more. So having, it is actually a good opportunity for your student and other students to kind of add into that group. So like I said, there are a couple different factors that we add in to help bump up some of those time slots, but it is based off that idea of the full groups do get that priority. And then we do factor in some of the seniority there too.
Someone just asked about Atlantic City courses that are offered there. And if you live in Atlantic City and you have courses in Galloway, or if you live in Galloway and you have courses in AC, which is also a possibility. What's that like? What's it look like? What's the ebb and flow of it? And earnestly, I'll be real about it. It's really not that bad. We have students right now who are going through it. If you have courses in Atlantic City and you're living in Atlantic City, you have to walk across the street. If you have courses in Galloway and you live in Atlantic City, you wake up, you hop on our Stockton shuttle. We have a shuttle system that is running running charter buses between our AC campus and our Stockton campus. It's for Stockton students, staff, and faculty only. It's all students that are taking it, and faculty and staff very rarely are on that bus. Um, they historically speaking, they've run from 7:30 in the morning to 12:30 at night during the weekdays, and on the weekends it was like 10 to 12, I think, something like that. Now this year it has been less, only because the number of students on campus has been lower because of the online modality that we have right now. However, even now we've had no problems with our offerings as far as shuttle schedules are concerned. But it really is not a big deal. We've been doing it for several years before the pandemic had hit, and it worked out pleasantly. And here's a big thing, and this is huge, okay? If your student has a concern, they gotta tell somebody. And I know y'all been trying to beat it into their head, but you gotta tell someone. I had a student who was like, "Hey, the shuttle bus has been leaving like 2 minutes early, and I keep on getting there on time, and it's gone." I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That's unfortunate. Who'd you tell?" What do you mean? Well, I didn't tell anybody. How are we supposed to fix it? Oh, good point. And we fixed it. And the shuttle driver, literally, it turned out that the shuttle bus clock was 2 minutes fast. Literally, that's all it was. So we changed it, and we were good to go. So listen, we'll work with you. But it's not that bad. Okay.
I will make a note because one of the concerns, just some students, some family members have concerns over commute, and I will actually say that we do have a decent population of students that, vice versa, like live in Atlantic City, have classes in Galloway, or live in Galloway, have classes in Atlantic City, and they do that intentionally. There are students that actually like that idea of living somewhere where they go away. Let's say they live in Atlantic City, maybe have this kind of view, but they get to live there, and then they go to Galloway for their classes, because that way they're going there. If their time, they spend the day there taking their courses, studying, kind of make a day out of it, kind of like how you would do a 9 to 5. And then when they're done, they kind of get to go home for the day. And they really, actually, I have a good group of students that have been doing that since we opened Atlantic City, because it really does give them that nice feeling of like how they take care of their time, how they utilize it, proper time management, proper study skills. And it actually has become very popular with the whole number of our students.
Someone asked, can they do the deposit on a credit card, or could they put money in their stocking account? Really, the easiest way is to do it via the portal, the e portal. I don't know.
E-deposit, the e-deposit. There we go.
E-deposit, yeah. That's really the easiest way. But yeah, no, that's the easiest way to do it.
I have a question on finding out assignments. So I will say, if your student is new to Stockton, meaning that they are currently in high school or they're currently at another institution, you will, like your students when they apply to Stockton, will be finding out their assignment during the summer. It's typically been around summer orientation. So I will say that, we're going to give more updates to those students as we kind of finalize those dates. But I will say it's, most of the time for our first year coming in freshman students, the ones that are currently in high school, that's typically around the time of, let's say, going into the early weeks of July. For transfer students, that's usually kind of that late July, beginning of August. Now, if your student is currently here, they find out their assignment when they place themselves in room. We don't take care of the placements for the renewal process. So that's important to keep in mind. If your student is currently studying at Stockton, attending Stockton, virtual or in person, they are renewing students and they choose their housing. So they'll find out during the month of April when we have our selection days.
Someone had asked, will parents be allowed into the dorms on move-in day, or is this to be determined? So this past year, someone came to me and said, hey, can you all figure out a socially distanced move-in schedule so everyone can move their students in and be safe? And I was like, sure. So we were able to successfully open up this past fall by spreading out the days, spreading out the times, and with everyone adhering to the masked up idea, we were able to do it successfully at the height of the pandemic. So could it change? Sure. I mean, we've all learned that we have to be able to roll with the punches, right? That said, we were able to come up with some kind of way. Now it would be limited. We weren't letting, student and 20 of their closest friends move in. But yeah, no, we can definitely work. We can work around and having individuals have people move in based on selecting the right time slots. Um, Someone had asked, oh, go ahead. You can.
I'll say one of the questions in here is how are students handled, like who might have allergies, let's say airborne allergies, things like that. Depends, I will say, one of two ways. One is some students who are continuing who know their roommates. Some students will just go in with their roommates knowing that there are certain allergies within the room, certain intolerances, and the roommates as a group work on that. Now I will also say is that if the allergy is more severe, if there's more, let's say, doctor's paperwork, things like that involved, I will note that we do have with our wellness center, we have the Learning Access Program, and they are the office that takes care of any type of housing accommodations, as well as academic accommodations, but talking about housing. So just in case your student might be, in the running for that, they want to make sure that they do reach out to the Learning Access Program. Here we always say the LAP office. So Learning Access Program is going to be a good start because that way you'll be able to submit whatever documents that, your student needs. They'll be able to meet with them and then we can go see what the housing accommodation options are. But on the general note of allergies, I will also say, haven't been to the area, living in the Pine Barrens, pollen can get pretty serious. So if it's seasonal allergies, I will warn, that's something that, cars have to get cleaned off from the yellow pollen pretty much this time of year regularly.
Someone asked if your students doing only the fall semester because they're graduating, can they still join a group? Absolutely. Yeah, no, we don't. Listen, it's a great question. I appreciate the question. We do not put any kind of different pressures for people to be in a position that we're all that one semester because things change. You decide you want another major or another minor, or you get into grad school, or there's so many different aspects to it that it's easier for us to work from going there. So yeah, no, you're fine. Someone just asked, how are the rooms cleaned, especially with COVID at the end of each year to prepare for the next group of students? So this is what happens. We get all the students out and then we do top to bottom, soup to nuts, deep cleaning. I mean, don't go in there without a mask on because it is cleaned efficiently, effectively, especially given what's going on right now. In addition, the rooms are inspected. My team and I will be going through all the different rooms, literally, not figuratively, literally, all of the rooms, every single room we have. We'll be going through to check to make sure things have been taken care of. They've been cleaned up. Things have been moved and cleaned. We're making sure nothing's been left behind. We're making sure things are shiny and as new as possible. I mean, so we'll definitely be able to make sure that has happened. Now, if something doesn't get done, we send them back. Now, if you move in, let me stress this, please. If you move in and of the 1,500 rooms that we inspected, if one fell through the crack, let us know. Come talk to us. We'll work with you. We'll get it fixed. We'll take care of it with you, okay? But in most cases, we're good to go, okay?
So one of the questions that just came in, I did touch on it a little earlier, but if you're checking for your deposit, it doesn't show up on the Bursars tab. That's just a link to get you to submit the e-deposit to the Bursars site. You'll want to click on the application status in the top right corner. So for anything to make sure, sign contract, you receive deposit, you want to click on the application status link. So one of the questions about, let's say selecting specific areas or buildings. So once again, the group leader. So when they form these roommate groups, they choose one of them that is going to be the group leader. Whether that's a group of 4, group of 2, group of 1 is their own group leader. But on that selection day, they'll be able to log in at the start of their time slot and they'll be able to see what housing areas are available. So that does include, let's say the example is housing 1. If they know that they want to live in housing 1 in H Court, because they like being down that side close to the nature path, they have that opportunity to actually say, okay, let's go look at H Court first. And then they'll be able to say, okay, first floor, second floor, see what's available and open at that time. If they find, let's say they're a group of 4 and they find that, okay, H34 is, has 4 beds available. I'm going to click on that one. And as the group leader, I'm responsible for putting each member into a bed. So that's important because your students, as they're working in the group leaders, or if your student is the group leader, they are the ones that are going to make sure everyone's going into that bed assignment. So once again, that's why, so the renewal process is important for your group members to get to know, like your student and their group members to talk about what their preferences are so they know who's going to go where.
Someone asked, is there going to be a schedule for students to help move out? We have not made those final decisions yet at this time. Right now, we are focused on renewal because getting these students locked in and set up with their roommates and in spaces is our number one priority at this time. But anything with move out that will change, we absolutely will definitely give you advanced warning and notice just in case. Okay. What happens if all the spaces in different areas? Everyone gets a bed. We put ourselves in a position where if your student gets a selection time slot, they will have something to pick from. Okay. Parking a student's car is free on the grounds. Yep, free parking.
As long as if they are a residential student, they just have to make sure they're parking in residential areas. But Stockton will reinstate their commuter versus residential student parking areas. And once again, no matter the group size, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, the group leader will be the one choosing housing. So the group leader will get a time slot. They'll get that email saying, hey, this is your date, this is your time to choose. The group members, so if your student's not the group leader, but they're a group member, they will get an email saying, hey, your group leader has their time slot now. Make sure you follow up with them, make sure they note it, schedule it, put it on the calendar, set reminders. So it's really important to make sure that your student is working with their group leader.
All right, everyone, listen, it's been fun. It's been awesome. We're done answering our questions, it looks like this time. So we are going to pass the baton back to Jen. When Jen was last here with us, we can see outside, and now it is pitch black out there. So I guess that means it's about time for us to be quiet, huh?
There we go. We've had a very productive night, but thank you both so very much for taking the time and extensively answering questions. I know that was quite a bit, and we really appreciate you just taking that time and attention to detail to share that with family members. So what we encourage you to do is to go back now, have a conversation with your student if they are still living with you, have a bowl of ice cream tonight and talk through this, maybe a bowl of cereal in the morning, or maybe FaceTime with each other if you're not together, just to talk through these different pieces. It is the student's responsibility to take care of that. I know that Brian and James very graciously offered for you all to email them at housing@stockton.edu, but as the Director of Parent and Family Partnerships, I'm going to encourage you to have a conversation and have your students email any questions that they have and to follow up with you because it is their responsibility. But just know that we are all here to help you and your student. A few final reminders too. If you are not watching this live and cannot see the chat, we also want to just share with you family@stockton.edu. Family@stockton.edu is the email address that you will want to use for any question that you have. So family members, please know that comes straight to me. And as the Director of Parent and Family Partnerships, it is my role to answer any questions you have at any time. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We also, if you go to www.stockton.edu /PFP, so Parent and Family Partnerships, we have a chat feature on our website that also comes to me. If I'm available, I can chat with you live. If I'm not, it comes to my email and I'll get back to you very quickly. So any questions can be sent there too. And it's a really easy thing to do. Just type in parent on the website and my page comes up and the chat is right in the bottom of all my pages. And then lastly, make sure to be checking our Facebook account and our Instagram account for family members. We post updates on there almost every single day. And so the Facebook page is the Office of Parent and Family Partnerships. That is the official page. I will tell you there are unofficial pages that we do not as a university recommend that you participate in. We truly recommend the official Parent and Family Partnership page. And then also if you want to follow us on Instagram, Stockton U Family is our handle. Again, Stockton U Family is our handle. So STOCKTONU FAMILY. So again, thank you all so much for joining tonight. And we hope to see you again at some of our future events. And have a good evening. Brian and James, thank you again so much. Take care, everybody.